We're watching FX Live. We're doing a concert in Monterrey. We're Deep Purple. I'm Don Airy. This is
Roger Glover.
Oh yes, yes,
Really?
right. And come and see us play tomorrow. It's going to be great.
And we're happy to be here.
Yeah. And I can have Huvos Rancheros for breakfast. Yes.
Do you like them? Great. Did you have today that? Oh, great.
Como también es trascender generaciones. A lo mejor la música ahorita es muy pasajera y ustedes han permanecido en el gusto de la gente y han pasado otras generaciones.
I don't think we pay much attention to fashion or trends or anything. We just do what we do. And it's kind of always been that way. We just do what we feel like doing, and we're lucky enough that it works.
When I first joined the band, it was all what you call the silver-haired ponytail brigade, you know?
Yeah.
All the older fans were there. But as it went on and we got kind of, the band took off again, suddenly all those guys went to the back and it was just young people. I mean, a sea of 18-year-olds. We couldn't, do you remember?
That's right.
And I think it was because the way music became automated, young people wanted to hear a real band.
Yeah.
They wanted to see what one looked like and sounded like.
Y hablando de pues un país, México, ¿no? ¿Cómo es para ustedes pues su gira aquí en México, la gente, el recibimiento?
Well, what do you want to hear?
The truth.
They're all fantastic, every single one of them.
No, I've never seen so many happy, smiling faces as you do here.
Yeah.
Especially the fans, if they come outside the hotel. You know, in Europe, everyone's, oh, Mr. Airy, oh.
Oh, okay.
But here they, oh. And, you know, they queue up and they're so pleased, you know.
Polite.
It's quite different
Que son
to
muy
anywhere else.
vietnamíes.
Quite different to any other country.
¿Y me pudiesen contar, o sea, en qué va a constar la gira de esta despedida?
Well, the long goodbye implies that we will say goodbye at some point. But the word long implies that we don't know how long it is.
So it's the never can say goodbye.
¿Cómo plasmar toda esa esos años de carrera musical pues en una gira demasiado larga en varios países?
Well, you can try. You know, we try to do a sample of everything from, you know, across the band's catalogue. So there'll be something from the first 3 albums, you know. We do some obscure tracks, we do some of the band that started when Steve Morse joined. And there's a lot of improvisation as well. We're just a band, you know, so we try to keep it informal, actually. You know, it's not very, we must do this. It's like, what shall we play?
Let's feel it.
Oh, it's a combination. It's 4 separate elements to a Deep Purple show, and they're all muddled up. So it all comes out one end, the thin end, hopefully, compressed and completely understandable. There'll be some well-known material from over the years, like Perfect Strangers and Smoke on the Water and Highway Star, and Lazy and stuff like that, Hush and Black Knight and stuff. Then a couple of obscure songs that the real Deep Purple fans will know very well, like Bloodsucker or maybe I'm a Leo, possibly. I don't know if we're going to change anything for tomorrow. Possibly we might talk about it over a drink tonight, who knows, in which case we'll be none the wiser tomorrow. Then there's the element of improvisation, which is always important. That keeps us on our toes. And there may be 1 or 2 stuff from Infinite, or possibly now one of the last couple of albums. But you don't need to be scared. It's quite easy to get over.
Well, how Bob Ezrin works is we rehearsed very hard before we went in to the studio, and that was the tough bit. And when we went into the studio, it was quite easy. I think we did 15 tracks in about 6 days. You know, to great surprise, Bob Ezrin goes, "Right, we're finished." And Ian Pace was on a plane 10 minutes after Bob Ezrin said that. Whereas then, of course, I stayed over, and Steve, and Roger as well, to do a few overdubs. and that was another week. And then the real work, you know, the most important thing, of course, the vocals went on, and that was done in Toronto. But we rehearsed in Germany and in Nashville, recorded in Nashville, in Toronto. Some of it was done in Cambridge in England. I did some of my keyboards. And that's how it all comes together, you know.
It was very fast work. What we did now, my work was 10 days. Infinite, my work was 7 days. It was all done for me and out of there.
With Deep Purple, it's always been the same. It's like the English weather, it's changeable every day, but the elements remain the same. I've worked with Roger Glover since I was about in my early 60s, when I was in a band called Episode 6 in 65. And he taught me, or inspired me, and taught me how to start writing songs. And we've done everything together since then. It's a bit like the way John Lennon and Paul McCartney used to work, insofar as sometimes Roger writes everything, sometimes I write everything, and sometimes we do it together. But the music always comes first. And it starts the same every day during the writing session. Normally at noon we go to the office for 6 days a week. We meet up, put the kettle on, have a cup of tea, talk about football, family, cars, rubbish. And then either Ian Pace or Don or anyone goes in and kicks off and starts jamming. We jam for 6 hours every day, stop for tea at 3 o'clock, and somebody records anything interesting, which we review. Mostly Roger, he's our bookkeeper, and says, well, that was interesting what you did on Tuesday afternoon, let's have a go at trying to turn that into a song. So we all gather around, have a listen to it. Yeah, that was a nice lick, that was a nice groove, maybe it can build into something. And so that's what happens. And eventually, we get a short list of ideas, and some of them really do develop into good songs, and some of them fall by the wayside.
I think the real reason is we love what we do.
Oh, that's a good.
We get kicks out of what we do. It's an unusual occupation. Not many people can do what we do, travel the world, and have people like us. Very nice. So why not?
Okay. You know, when we were kids, we'd all this because it made us happy. I made me happy, he made him happy. We did it for ourselves. Now, 50 years later, we can still be those kids again, making ourselves happy. And if you guys come along with us, that's okay. But we make ourselves happy first.
You make me happy.
I do, all the time. That's another story.
Deep Purple's probably got more influences than any other band in the history of the universe. Our influences were everything from Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, Scobie Breesley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and all of those people who came in. They made a big impression on our lives, which just came into mind. And it was a lot of diversity of music that gave us the music that we have. It's got kind of, if you like, orchestral composition overtones because of John Lord and because of Don Airey and their background. But also from them comes jazz from Jimmy Smith and piano playing and rock and roll and all that. We all have different influences and it all comes together, and that's what makes the chemistry of the band. And every band is individual in that sense because of the elements that make it up.
The music is a big picture, a little picture.
Yeah.
So you take it from everywhere.
Well, I go a bit early.
Sound good?
Yeah, I don't smoke, I don't drink. And I go to bed early every night.
Anyway, I grew up in a musical family. My grandfather was a singer. My grandmother was a ballet tutor. So there was always opera and stuff going on in the house. My uncle, as I said, was a jazz pianist. He used to play boogie woogie and stride. He was a professional player. And I was a boy soprano in the church choir, so I got interested in chorale music. And then along came Elvis. And I didn't get off on Perry Como, so it was him or Elvis, and that was it. And it all just came on then, the rock and roll, the early days, and The strange thing was there was no genreification. Everything was rock and roll in those days. There was, you know, whether it was Little Richard or Jerry Lee Lewis, who were pure rock and roll, or Elvis, who did everything from gospel to mush with the jailhouse rock in between, and the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly. That was all rock and roll because of the attitude and because it was our music. So we didn't define it as it. Can you imagine how they would have been bagged today, those different singers, those different Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, who was probably the greatest influence on rock and roll anyway through his writing. Plus everything was 3 chords in those days, so kids could learn really easily. Just at every level, at an amateur level, you can play 3 chords, you can be in a band by tea time, if you get a guitar at lunchtime. So those were my influences. I was part of all that, and most of us were. It was a very exciting time.
The media doesn't really help rock and roll very much. It's nice that you guys are here because it lets people know that yes, we are in Mexico. I understand that. But I heard you mention MTV.
Pero escuché que mencionaron MTV.
MTV is not interested in what we do.
Okay, MTV no está interesado en esto.
this, they want faster than they want this.
Well, we've got that.
It's terrible.
Really?
Es terrible.
Listen, when I was a kid, my uncle was a jazz pianist, and when I played him Deep Purple and Rock for the first time, he ran from the room screaming, saying, "That's not music, I can't hear any of the instruments." And according to him, it was terrible. And you know what, that made me feel very happy, because our music was for our generation only. It wasn't for our parents. And so there's this kind of psychological vandalism that every generation has to destroy what went before. And so I wouldn't have appreciated him telling me that it was good, because I wouldn't have liked him to say that. It's just the same as, you know, when David Cameron said he loved the Smiths. I'm sure they were all delighted about that. And so it's not my position to tell anyone of a younger generation how good their music is or how bad it is, because it doesn't make any sense.
We had one advantage too. We grew up with the originators of rock and roll. So we have a closer affinity to what rock and roll is. The next generation are taking on from what we think it is. And therefore it's a little bit diluted.
It's homeopathic.
Yes, of course. Very, very good for you, unfortunately.
What I will say is that the world is full of extremely talented young musicians now. They're amazing, but the world has changed. And what we were trying to say was that the influences have been diluted, and they're now making music in a different way than the way we made it. So it's hard to judge from where we're standing.
I mean, we work a lot, we tour a lot, and frequently we are supported by new bands. And in fact, they don't actually come to us looking for tips. We actually go to them looking for tips. Because the new bands, you know, people say new music is crap, but there's some great bands out there. And they teach us as much as we can teach them.
I don't remember much. I don't think any of them do. I lived in a tent during the process of making the record. I lived in a tent. I got blown up with dynamite, which killed all the fish in Richard Branson's lake. From the concussive blow, I got threatened with dismemberment by the manager, Don Arden. I didn't see the rest of the band for the entire making of the record. I recorded during the daytime, and they recorded at night, and we kind of passed like ships in the night. They would do a track, and the next day I would get up, have some breakfast, go to the studio, write a song over it. And that was it. The tour was amazing, different to anything I'd ever done before. They had interesting production values, and it was quite challenging. But I have to say, it was an education, and the longest party I've ever been to in my life. It lasted a whole year, and it was an experience that I'm glad I had. I'm still very close and good friends with Tony Iommi, and it was a good time, a great time.
Oh, we all have individual plans, yeah. When Deep Purple finishes the tour, we have a little relaxation, we take a little rest, And then Don may decide to go out on the road with a little band that he likes, and Ian may do something separate with an orchestra, and I may guest with another band, and Roger will do whatever Roger does in the mountains of Switzerland. Because, you know, we are free to do different things, and we enjoy doing it. We're musicians, that's what we do. And we have to be on stage. Not all our lives, but that's where we live.
We've been, this band has been going now, this is our 50th year. And for the first 30 years, we didn't come to Mexico for various reasons. But in the last 20 years or so, we've been coming to Mexico, and honestly, it's one of the best places we've ever been. We have great audiences, great people, and we've been toured around many of the cities, and it's a pure joy to be here. Just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.